it's not too late to hit record. So population, we pull a sample from the population. Hopefully the sample closely matches the population. Some sample types. One is a convenience sample. I'm going to tell you right now, a convenience sample is bad. An example of a convenience sample would be like if I said, hey guys, I want you to write 2 questions and go sample people. And probably what's going to happen is you're going to sample your family, your friends, maybe your neighbors, something like that. You're going to sample the people that are convenient to you. And the reason this is bad is this sample is likely to have similar opinions, tastes, etc. That's why we have friends, right? Oftentimes we agree on stuff. Convenience sample bad. It doesn't really capture the population. Another example of how a convenience sample could be done is, let's say I say, okay, write 2 questions, and I want you to go stand in front of Albertsons and question the people coming out and see if you can get a survey of, say, 30 people or something like that. So you stand out at the end of at the door of Albertsons as people are exiting. You go, hey, can you answer 2 quick questions for me? And you table that. You make marks or whatever you're doing. But who are you missing? If you question people at Albertsons, who might you be missing in the population? Exactly, people who are not Albertsons shoppers, right? Hey, Winco right here, it's cheap, okay? So, you know, you're going to miss the Whole Foods folks, what's the one down there that's like Whole Foods? The Co-op, you know, you're going to miss those people. So you're missing a part of the population. The next one is a voluntary response. If convenience sampling is bad, voluntary response is worse. Okay? These people choose themselves. These responders choose themselves. And that's a problem. A good example of a voluntary response sample is American Idol. Call in. Tell us who you vote for. Who's going to call in? People who watch American Idol and are passionate about who they think should win, right? Neither of those things is bad. It's just not necessarily representative of the whole population. So they are generally most passionate about the subject. By passionate, what I really mean is opinionated. And oftentimes they're either mad or happy. I'll give you a couple more examples because this is an important one to understand. Anybody eat at Taco Bell? Ben, right? Ben and I eat at Taco Bell. Okay, all right. So Ben, when you go to Taco Bell, they give you the receipt, right? And on the back of the receipt, it says, "Take this survey and win maybe $500." Have you ever done the survey?
Like one time.
Why?
Well, mostly because I have a buddy who works there, and he like told me it helps him out, and they like backed me at the window.
Yeah, yeah.
$500.
Right.
But I've gone probably dozens of times.
Not done it. Yeah, yeah. So here's the reality. Most people who do the survey, or a survey like that, are in that case they're offering $500. They're one of three people, the way I see it. Either they're ticked off because somebody put a sliver of onion in their taco, and that taco is not supposed to have any onions in it. Or maybe it was low on cheese or something, right? Okay? This $2 taco, man, I'm going to Tin Roof next time because this is no good. Okay? Or they're really happy. Oh my gosh, finally somebody gave my 29-year-old son who lives in the basement a job. Thank you so much, Taco Bell. Okay? Or they want to see if they can get the $500, which is probably next to nothing in terms of your opportunity, right? I don't know how often they give the $500 or what, who knows. But so most people are mad or happy about it. Another example of this would be a government representative of some sort. You know, people send letters in, hey, I agree with this law or I disagree with this law. If they just looked at the letters that they received, that's a voluntary response. Is that going to be representative of everybody in their constituency? And the answer to that's no, because they don't get people don't write letters when they're like, oh yeah, hi, Mr. Representative man or woman, I really don't have an opinion on this. You don't get that. You don't get that middle of the ground kind of thing, right? Yeah, Ben.
And one that I notice a lot is like reviewing things. Like it's like like an app or something on Amazon or whatever. Most of the time, like out of 5 stars, you'll see a lot of 5s and a lot of 1s.
Right.
But not a lot in the middle because people just don't. If they're just okay with it, they usually won't bother. Even if they're happy about it, a lot of the times people won't bother. But if they're pissed about it, usually they'll stay their minds.
An absolutely perfect example. Amazon, yeah, Amazon ratings or any kind of internet rating. Absolutely, internet ratings are the worst kind of sampling. It doesn't mean that there isn't some value in there. It just means that you have to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. Okay. All right, we need to move on. SRS. SRS is a simple random sample. And anything with random is good. In this case, the participants are chosen in some random way. I'll stop there. They're chosen in some random way that ensures that everyone in the population has an equal chance of being chosen. may or may not be part of the sample, but you had an equal chance of being in it. That is an SRS. And that is one of the, or is probably the best way to sample. If you're asked a question on the AP test or any of my tests about an SRS, or how to do an SRS, there are lots of ways to take a random sample. A very good way to describe it, in fact the AP recommends that you describe it like this, would be names in a hat. Put the names in the hat, draw out however many we need, and that is a random way of selecting. That's an acceptable method of selecting. Now, it's not so good if you're trying to select 10,000 out of 2 million, right? That's probably not going to be a very efficient way to do it, but you could describe it that way. You'd use some technology, which we'll get to here in a little bit, to do that. All right, moving on. So, kind of to make what we've already talked about a little bit more visual, let's go back to our population cloud. If we take a convenience sample, it's not shaped like the cloud at all. Who knows what the shape is, but it's not cloud-like. If we take a voluntary response sample, it also is not shaped like the cloud. Neither one is going to be representative of this cloud shape. So how do we get the cloud shape? We have to do something SRS-y. My SRS cloud was pretty bad, sorry. All right, but there are other sampling methods yet to talk about. A stratified. Random sample. Yeah, it has the same letters, but we would never call this an SRS. It's different. It's not a simple random sample. So whenever you see SRS, that's simple random sample, never stratified. This method separates a population by groups, or groups. A group or groups. I guess probably it's going to be more than one. It separates them based on some similarity that they all share. Based on some similarity. There are lots of examples here that I could put in, but one of the biggies is gender. And then random samples are chosen from each strata or group. So the groups are strata. Random samples are chosen from each strata or group. when you fill stuff out for colleges or whatever, what you're really filling out is a survey of some sort for the most part. And the surveys almost always include a few questions to stratify people by. What's your gender? What's your age? What's your family income, right? These are all familiar, probably should be familiar questions for the most part on pretty much any survey that you get. Now, I'm not very good at taking those because I never tell them my income because I feel like that's none of their business for the most part. I don't tell them how many are in my family or anything like that. And if it's the government can look it up, okay? So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm not one to be asked about taking surveys. I think my privacy is more important than that. Now, how this works though is, let's say we take a population, something you're familiar with, CHS students. How might we want to separate the groups of CHS or CHS students into groups? How might that logically be done? Yeah, grade level, right? Exactly. So we would take all of the freshmen and then all of the sophomores, all of the juniors, and of course the best class, the seniors, right? And then from each of those strata, then we would draw an SRS from those, a simple random sample. That would be one way that you could stratify students that might make sense. You could also do, like, if you wanted to group it up a little bit more, you could say upperclassmen and lowerclassmen or something along those lines. But there, again, there are lots of ways. And stratifying data or a population can happen in many different ways. And it doesn't just happen, it doesn't necessarily just happen in one instance. At this point, then we might stratify by male, female, or whatever. You could do this a number of times, separate however you need. All right. Got a couple more things to talk about, and then we are done for our notes. Cluster sample. A cluster sample is a little bit like a stratified sample. It doesn't come up so often, but you could get a question on it somewhere along the line. I always think of a cluster sort of in terms of geography. And this samples a predefined group. So perhaps the city of Boise wants to survey some clusters within their boundaries, and maybe this is the Northwest Boise cluster. Perhaps they make a boundary of anything west of 5 miles, say, and north of Ustick, something like that. That would be a cluster, and then you would randomly select from that cluster. That is, as I understand clusters to work. It doesn't come up all that often, but it can. Now, some fun stuff to talk about. What can go wrong? Lots of things, turns out. Our last election cycle showed that quite clearly. Would you agree? We got a president that was not at all predicted to make it in. Stuff happens. So something went wrong with their sampling. One thing that can go wrong is undercoverage. undercoverage occurs when people are unaccounted for in the population. So they're not part of the SRS. Let's put a who there. Who might not be accounted for? Yeah. Okay, not old enough to vote. Although would that, if you're looking for voting adults, would they technically fall into the population? Or I'm sorry, or didn't vote. Maybe they're not, okay, so maybe they're not registered to vote. Yeah, unregistered voter. If you're sampling the population and all you take are registered voters, you're missing the unregistered one. Okay?
I guess maybe if the things they asked were like, are you voting like Democratic or Republican, and didn't take into consideration third party.
Ah, yeah, third party candidate voters. Right, yeah, that could certainly come into play. I'm thinking something different. What about the homeless? Are the homeless part of our population? What if I try to contact them by mail? Am I going to have any luck? How about home phone? Yeah, probably not. If they don't have a door to knock on, how am I going to contact them? So I think of homeless, but those are also excellent examples. So if I were to draw this situation out, here's my population again, and this is the sample group that I've identified. This is the sample group, or sample frame. And I pull the sample from that. Who am I missing? Well, these guys here and these guys here are my under coverage. They're in the population, but they weren't in my sample frame because I didn't know they were in the population, or I had no way of contacting them in some way. They're there, but they sort of don't exist in whatever data way that we have. All right, the other one's non-response. This is pretty much defines me a lot at the time. Every year, it hasn't happened this year. It's a good thing I saved some from last year. Every year I get this bundle of surveys that I'm supposed to give to my students, and it's asking you stuff like, you know, what are you thinking about after high school and all this, and they want to put you on a mailing list. I see it for what it is. It's junk and you don't want it. So I always throw them away, but I have saved the last couple of years just so that we could like look at them and go, oh yeah, see what they're doing here? They're stratifying us or something like that. Non-response is, earlier I talked about if you were questioning people coming out of Albertsons, and the person coming out of Albertsons puts up the hand and says, I don't have time for that. That's a non-response. They don't have time, they don't want to participate. People who are unwilling or unable, probably not unable, people who are unwilling to respond. And we probably all do that at some point or another. But it has an effect on the overall data that people are trying to collect. I don't really care about their data. I only care about me, so I'm a selfish jerk. All right? Okay. The last one is response bias. It deals with who, what, how questions are asked. Is your question leading? Am I trying to get a particular response? Something like that would be a response bias. There are more fun examples, though. One in the book gives is, it asked, a sample was taken and they asked everybody in the sample, do you wash your hands every time after using the bathroom? And according to the responses, the verbal response was, yes, every time I go to the bathroom I wash my hands. So what they did then is they went into the bathrooms, this seems a little bit awkward, and they observed people washing or not washing their hands. And they found that about 10% less actually washed their hands than claimed that they did. So I think a more fun example is this. Let's say I'm being questioned by a particularly attractive female that I want to go out on a date with, okay? And she asks me a survey question, have you ever been arrested? How do I answer? You say no? Doesn't it depend? Because if I am interested in this person and I want to impress them in some way, I may try to read from them whether they want me to respond that yes, I'm the bad boy, or no, I'm an angel, right? So I may lie based on what benefit I think might come to me. And I think that is a great example of when, like, gosh, I don't want this person to think that I'm a lawbreaker, but on the other hand, I might want this person to think I'm a lawbreaker. Yeah, Ben?
Well, I saw this a while ago, and they went around like asking like religious people how many like, or I think it was just like people who like believe in like God or whatever. How many people do you think, or, like what percentage of people do you think will go to heaven?
Yeah.
And then they would give out like 60%, 80%, and then do you think you are? And like 90% of them said yes.
Right. I think I've seen something like that in the past. Yeah. Yeah. Who's going to heaven? Sure. Sure. So the bias response in that would be more along the lines of, if you're filling out a survey and you're anonymous and it's on paper and you're turning it in, you're a lot more likely to tell the truth on that, assuming that the questions are fair, okay? But if somebody's asking you, if your priest is asking you, do you think you're going to go to heaven? Or whatever, your minister, whatever. Well, yeah, I'm going. Aren't you sending me there? That's what I thought the deal was here, right? Okay. So yeah, good examples. That's why I love this.